Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Call for Code webinar. This is our last one in a series of many, and this is a special one because this is about storytelling. And we have an expert with us today. But first, I'll introduce myself. I'm Susie Kother. I'm the project manager of Call for Code, and I will also be participating in this webinar a little later on. I'll talk about the best practices for how to do your submission. But starting us off today is our guest, Maisha Alexander. She is the Senior Impact and Design Manager for CGIU. She is our resident storyteller expert, and she's got a lot of great tips she's going to share today. So we're glad you're all here. Get out your pens and paper and take notes because she's got some tips that's going to help you. And then afterwards, after she presents, we'll have her do some questions. If you have any, you're welcome to, we encourage you to ask questions through the chat, and our moderator will help us out there. But I think Maisha will go through her whole presentation, and then we'll answer some questions in between, and then we'll transition over to the best practices. So thank you again for joining us this morning. And Maisha, I will let you take it from here.
Thank you so much, Susie. I'm very excited to be here today. Good morning and good day from wherever you're joining from. I'm currently in upstate New York on this foggy early morning, and I'm really happy to be part of your journeys today as you navigate this competition. Today, we're going to discuss the power of storytelling, and I'm going to share some dynamic storytelling techniques that can really help your project and ideas stand out, especially when you're trying to garner support for that idea and when you are pitching. So here's a bit of an overview that I'll follow today. I will tell you a bit more about myself, and I'll also discuss the power of narratives. We'll talk about some questions that you can ask yourself to help make your storytelling strategic. We will talk about building that story into your pitch, and then I will end by giving you a few of my tips, my takeaways. So if you don't take anything else away from this, please pay attention to that section where I just basically try and summarize everything that we've discussed today. So, as Susie mentioned, my name is Maisha Alexander, and I'm the Senior Impact and Design Manager for the Clinton Global Initiative University, which is also known as CGIU. And my role includes managing the portfolio of over 11,000 CGIU alums, helping our participants develop their projects as well as their leadership skills within the social impact space. I structure and manage our mentorship program as well. And I design and resource the educational components of our year-round social impact and entrepreneur curriculum. I help produce our webinar series and help with creating opportunities for students to present and share their projects and achievements, not just with our community, but for the larger national and global media opportunities as well. In addition to being a CGIU staff member, I'm also a CGIU alum. So I've been in the space of creating and executing human-centered projects. Outside of my CGIU life, I'm an active creative professional, a trained filmmaker who focuses primarily on documentary work. I'm also a trained anthropologist that focuses on forensic anthropology in a humanitarian context, and a science communicator. So I help scientists and students tell their stories of their data and their research specifically to non-experts and lay people. In every instance of my personal and professional career, storytelling has definitely been a vital form of communication for me. And when you think about it, it's likely been a vital component of your life as well. We're all storytellers in one way or another, and it's the way that we communicate our experiences and transfer information, traditions, preserve and share our histories, and connect with others. Storytelling is a really powerful way to communicate and can transform how we share our professional goals. And it's really an effective way to drive and motivate action. And there's plenty of theoretical and empirical evidence and research that also suggests that the human brain is hardwired for stories. Stories that can help us communicate our values as lived experiences and not just sort of abstract ideas or concepts that we can't really hold on or grasp onto. They really help our audience understand complex ideas and illustrate how what we're presenting can be applied to the real world. And so they help us to relate and connect to one another in meaningful ways. And this might sound really more emotional than you might expect, but there is a bit of emotion to it. And when you think about some of your favorite ads or even marketing schemes, they really kind of feel omnipresent and everywhere because you remember them really well. It's often because of the story. So think about commercials, for example. Commercials are a bit like pitches, and we're the investors, but they want us to not just put our money into those products that they're selling or showing us. They also sell a lifestyle. They want us to become promoters and champions of their brands. And that's exactly what you want when people talk about your idea or your products or what it is that you're creating or producing or the solution that you're presenting. So I'm going to give you a really good example. One of my favorite commercials, and it usually comes on around the holidays, shows a young woman. She's in her house and she's searching through a box full of memories and pictures. And there's an old recording that she turns on, and it's of her grandmother singing to her grandfather about being separated during the holidays. And it's so sweet. And you hear the warm pops of the vinyl in the background indicating old technology, this analog sound. And as the young woman sifts through the pictures, we see the grandma and grandpa as a lovely young couple together. Grandpa was clearly in the military, which alludes to the reason why they were likely separated. And then through a montage, you see the girl, and she's clicking away at her computer, grabbing different instruments, sifting through the music. She's clearly recording or creating something, we're not quite sure, but we know that there's something emotional, thoughtful, creative, nostalgic, and beautiful happening. And then on Christmas morning, the young woman goes to the stairs, and the camera, through the camera's point of view, we see a clear view of the grandmother in the kitchen holding her newly gifted tablet technology and looking at the pictures on the tablet and listening to a recording where her talented and compassionate granddaughter has not only digitized the recording that she made for her husband years ago, but has also created a new rendition in which she sings and harmonizes with her grandmother's, whose eyes are now sort of filled with tears and memories. As the commercial ends, all we see is the company logo. The pitch is that this technology is not just for kids. It can bring people together. It transcends generational boundaries and preserves memories while making new ones. And most people can really connect to the feelings that are being evoked through the storytelling, longing, wanting to create or give something unique and thoughtful to someone that we love. And in fact, it's a whole industry. There are all sorts of websites and shops that are dedicated to handmade, one-of-a-kind objects in order to sort of give these kind of moments. And the technology company could have very well just shared the tech, showed the products, shared the specs, and gone on. But the pitch was about the enhancement that the tech would bring to your life. And that's what we want to do. That's the feeling that we want people to walk away with. So social impact storytelling really is about the ways that we leverage the experience of our product or service or whatever it is that we're sharing with the what and why we do what we do, and how we get others motivated to join our efforts. In fact, in the year 2000 or so, there was a study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology that revealed that effective storytelling does have the power to actually redirect our beliefs and our willingness to act. So there is definitely power in this. Our trick is figuring out how to use storytelling in our professional lives the same way that we use it in our personal lives. So think about it. When you're getting to know someone, you likely tell them stories about yourself, like how you learned to do a thing, the turning points in your life, your favorite foods, situations that painted and molded who you are when they meet you. And we want this person to know us. We want them to understand our motivations, be interested in us, and want to spend more time with us and think about us when we're not in the room. And that's kind of what we want for our products and the projects that we're creating. We're looking to do the same thing. And what this looks like is making data meaningful and memorable by connecting it to real world examples. So here's some brain science for you. A great story can lead to the release of oxytocin, which creates a deeper bond between the storyteller and their audience. And motivating your prospect to take a specific action by demonstrating the positive results of that action, that's a really powerful motivator. That's really what we want. So when we're talking about storytelling for impact, we're talking about how we use storytelling strategically. So when you're starting to work out the storytelling plan for your project, here are some key questions that you'll want to ask yourself. Start with, what's the strategy? Okay. So when creating a narrative for your project, you should communicate the goals and the concerns that speak best to your target audience, meaning it needs to be relatable. It also means you need to be as clear as possible about who your target audience is for the project or the idea that you're presenting. Who is the community that you're hoping to serve and why? When people relate to the story, we mean that they have been activated in a way that enables them to feel or relate to you as the speaker. And these types of relatable stories connect with our limbic system. The limbic system is this kind of prehistoric area in our brain that's responsible for what we call intuition. And we don't necessarily need logic or reasoning here. We're connecting over our shared experience and over visceral memory. So this is a powerful foundation to build upon. This is also why we should really be aiming for authenticity. Don't present something that's not real or not authentic to what it is that you've created. We also don't want to activate anyone's deception alerts that live in that same area. The next question we want to ask is, what is our structure? So your storytelling structure is pretty basic: beginning, middle, and end, right? However, an effective storytelling framework will also connect your personal story or story of specific individuals with a larger idea or concept. Using a personal or specific anecdote, case studies, these things help to illustrate why you and your team are motivated to act or solve a certain problem and can help your audience connect with your idea and mission. And they can connect with this intellectually as well as emotionally. This connection is incredibly valuable and can bring about an empathetic response. It can help us to illustrate this larger and more abstract concern or problem that you're seeking to address. Next, it's helpful to ask, not just helpful, it's essential to ask, what is the purpose, right? Be specific here and keep the main thing the main thing. Your story should have a clear sense of purpose because it directly relates to what you're asking. Your ask is what you're hoping your prospects feel compelled to do after you give your presentation. So if you've woven your story into your pitch well, what this should sound like can create a very subtle but significant difference to your listener. This could be the difference between we're asking for $500 to build an app versus we're asking for $500 to keep Hannah safe. One version is fine. It's very utilitarian. It is what it is. The other version means that you've created a personalized experience in which your prospects have been shown the real life impact of their investment. It's not just about the app, it's what the app will do. So let's talk about developing the story structure. Each of you have a reason for why your project means something to you. But also each of you have you, your experience, your drive, your meaning, your cultural viewpoint and skill, your informal and formal education. And all of this should be taken seriously because all of this is wrapped in the things that we choose to support and rally around. So leverage that, use that. One example of a narrative structure that can be very effective is one in which the plot is structured with a beginning, movement towards a desired goal, an unexpected event, a crisis that engages our curiosity, sometimes known as a conflict or the tension, the choices made in response to this crisis, and an outcome. And this type of story is important and helpful because it teaches us how to act, but also inspires us to act. So I thought we'd do an example right now of what this looks like. So I want you to listen to this beginning of this pitch. All right, here we go. 3 years ago, I was making cookies for the first time on my own, and I was excited because I was going to make one of my auntie's famous recipes. I pulled the cookies proudly from the oven, and my sister bit into the gooey, crunchy, warm dessert. As she chewed, I saw her face change from bliss to concern, and then she began to cough. Something was wrong. I had accidentally poisoned my sister. I poured a cup of toxic washing powder into instead of sugar because I couldn't read the label properly. While my sister was able to get treated and recover, I knew that I never wanted to cause another accident like that again. So I decided to learn to read. I was illiterate. Because there are no formal literacy programs in Maisha land, I went 2 towns over, a trip that took me 2 hours each way for weekly lessons. I soon discovered that I was actually one of 450 Maisha Landians, which is about 30% of citizens in my community who couldn't read. And that's when I decided to start the Doe Literacy Association. So let's look at this story again. We start out with the beginning movement towards the goal, which was to make good cookies. And then we have the unexpected event, the accidental poisoning of my sister. This is also the crisis that gets me to engage, that I couldn't read the label. There's another crisis that gets me to engage is when I realized that I wasn't the only one, or our character wasn't the only one dealing with this, that this was not just a crisis of me, this was a crisis of community. And then we share the outcome, which was the start of this program or the development of this product. Now, the choices that the character makes during this crisis, of course, leads to the program, but I also included some significant factual data that helps to add weight to the gravity of the situation. And I kind of want to draw your attention to how I presented the data. I presented it within the context of the story, which provides meaning for the data. And if I had just said 30% of citizens are affected, this percentage can actually be a little or a lot. You don't know about Maisha Landians unless you're a citizen of the community. Even if you're a citizen of the community, you may not know how many people live there, right? So 30% could be one person if only 3 people live in this town, but it can be a significant amount if more lives there. So I needed to give not just the number, but also the context of people that were actually affected by this. And also showing it visually is helpful as well. And this also tells you the audience, my target audience, the potential reach of my program, and then it makes the number 30% less abstract on its own. The story also works because it communicates my character's values as a lived experience rather than an abstract ideal of illiteracy in general, because ultimately that's what I'm tackling or taking on, illiteracy. But the more you can communicate this sort of specificity, the more power your story will have to engage. This story drew from my character's life, but it built on key points and detailed the challenges that were faced, the choices that were made, and the outcomes that were experienced. It explains why the character was called to do a job, and including some of the data and statistics in a way that enhanced and informed the motivations, rather than a way that was too technical or overwhelming or removed from the issue, right? So I communicated what the problem was, illiteracy, and the solution that I'm communicating or pitching is access to community-based literacy support. The next thing I would want to do is enhance my story with factual information, statistical information, and metric-oriented information about my organization or the product or whatever the thing that I'm presenting is. And the impact I want to talk about the impact on the challenge that I'm seeking to address. And all of this is actually still part of me presenting the solution. And if I'm presenting this, I would really want to weave it into my narrative. And it could sound something like, Now, in our third year of operation, the DOE Literacy Program has accomplished a number of benchmarks that I'm proud to share with you today. We've had over 200 students between the ages of 18 and 60 complete our literacy programs, and of those students, more than half continue to volunteer at the organization. So I'm giving you the metrics, I'm giving you our details in terms of factual data, but I'm weaving it into the story of our accomplishments. Now, in my case, the product that I'm presenting, which is the literacy program, has been in existence a while. So I have metrics based on what I've learned and my key performance indicators during the implementation of this program. But if you're just starting out, you won't likely have these. And in that case, sharing the benefits of what you're developing and proposing can be the way to effectively get to and to communicate the value of what you're proposing. And please don't worry, there is a method for this too. So what we would want to do is to communicate the values is we want to start with a bold, simple, declarative statement about your product. Follow up with factual, grounded statements about your product to provide context, tell your audience why they should care, and then tell them how they can take action in this moment. Like, how can they help you out right now? So what this would look like if we're still in the ideation phase, using our literacy model might sound something like this. Our literacy model can transform communities. That's the big, bold statement. Program participants will be able to access learning materials 7 days a week from the most central locations in our town. That's a factual, grounded statement. As literacy rates improve, the U.S. Department of Education research shows that correlated improvements to personal income, employment levels, and health ultimately lead to overall positive economic and community growth. This is the why they should care. And then your investment into this program is a solid start to a long-term sustainable community investment plan. And this is where we tell them how to act. So you see how that works together? Now that you've done all this, you're next going to have to say how you intend to do it. So this is when you talk about the inner workings of your tech, the product, and the program. And this doesn't need to be intense. It probably shouldn't be, because when you're providing a pitch or sharing this information, you're working with limited time. So you need to be sure that you're clear and you're hitting the high notes. What's most unique about the product? Is it low cost or no cost? Does it leverage existing networks or infrastructures? How will it make Maisha Land a better place? Why will citizens feel compelled to join in? For our literacy program, we might talk about a program that's a part of what we're offering that helps students not just gain literacy skills, but also moves them into college degree programs. We can present our strategic partners in this plan, talk about specific features that have the potential for the highest immediate impact. We would talk about cost and goals for the inaugural class of this program. Something like, we hope to pilot this program with 5 participants funded through the creation of scholarship and in partnership with the local colleges. You can mention the overall technique that you're using. We are using Montessori education techniques that can be replicated in the home and the work settings. So this middle section is intended to really illustrate the impact of our efforts and share something that has changed about our lives or our communities or the audience that we're working with, or share something that will change about the lives and the communities and the audience that we're working with. And I think it's also important to really point out language here. When you have an opportunity to talk about this, I would suggest using words like "this will do this," or instead of words like "this could do this," "this can do this." Those sound a little bit passive. We don't want to be passive when we're presenting our project. We should believe in our project. And these accomplishments that we believe in are these accomplishments that we hope to achieve, however you're presenting it, imply that we've done work and research, we've stayed focused and diligent, we show our abilities as a leader, and we are presenting our project for positive results for everyone. Other narrative structures that you may want to explore include sharing case studies, highlighting customer pain points, walking through real scenarios, or using something called the crystal ball technique, which is when your storyline involves forecasting what will come next within a certain industry. And these can be really helpful if you don't necessarily have or want to share a personal story. You can use these kind of elements in a similar manner to connect the impact of your work on what it will have, or what the impact will have on solving the problem that you're presenting. And it also helps to demonstrate the value that it and you have. When you're folding in your pitch to your story, or your story into your pitch, I really do think that there are 3 key areas where the narrative can really help to bolster your pitch. And those areas, when presenting, are in your problem statement, when you're discussing the solution, and when you're talking about tech. This is because the problem statement is your most powerful opportunity to set up your story, right? How are we personally affected and what the conflict is. In the solution, you're really talking about transformation. So walk us through it, guide us through it. Let us experience the transformation through the narrative. And when we talk about technology, because technology can be very difficult sometimes to discuss because it has technical understandings and sometimes might need a little bit of specialist language. When you talk about the technology through narrative, it gives us another language to be able to sort of simplify and understand how the technology is going to affect us, even if we don't really get how it works. So when it comes to explaining how things work, there's sometimes this instinct to use jargon or specialist language because we think people will see our brilliance and the familiarity with the tech. We want to sound like experts, right? And some of us may have been led to believe that jargon helps us do that, especially when we're in college. We need to utilize those words in our class because it's important to know that we understand what we're getting, right? Or we understand what we're doing or talking about. It sounds good. Be careful, because it actually can be really alienating, and this is something that we don't want to do. If you are delivering a presentation to other experts or at a professional conference, using jargon and technical language is a perfectly fine way to be understood. But if you are not, revamp your speech, your pitch, and your talking points for the audience that you're addressing. And narratives can help us understand the concepts for how tech or the product works. Also, please be careful with acronyms. So, for example, AAA or AAA can mean the American Automobile Association. It can also mean the Approved Auto Associates or the American Anthropological Association. It can be a lot of different things. So if you want to use acronyms, define them first in context and then use the abbreviated form. So if we go back to my intro, right, I said, or I started with, I'm currently the Senior Impact and Design Manager for the Clinton Global Initiative University, also known as CGIU. Then I continue to use CGIU. Do that. All right, so now we've reached the time for my storytelling tips, and here they go. Finding your story. Remember, we humans are wired for stories. My friends and alums that have pitched ideas and shared stories, even the ideas that I've pitched, repeatedly say that investors tell them that they invest in people more than products. That means you need to look for points of connection that help connect your product with the experiences of being human. Think of your pitch as a moment within a relationship building journey. Number 2, don't overdo it. Storytelling is not a substitute for basic business plan content, and this includes competitive analysis and financials. It is an effective tool that should elevate and enhance the work and data and research that you're bringing to the table. Number 3, keep the main thing the main thing. I've shared narrative forms, a bit of associated brain science. I've talked about points during your pitch that you can really leverage for storytelling. But in the end, your presentation should really answer why we should care. What's the problem? This does really need to be about the bigger specific problem that your product solves in the moment. So I'm going to give an example because that's kind of muddled. So the company Square sells a credit card reader. But if you probably talk to their leadership, they probably say something like, we enable everyone to participate and thrive in the economy. That is a value statement, an ethos. They probably have stories that help to convey that ethos, this democracy of small business owners thriving. And that's a big, exciting idea. So make sure, even though as you're giving the specifics of how we can involve ourselves with your idea and what your idea will solve, make sure we understand that we should care because you have a big, exciting idea or you have an ethos and value statement. And you should also be telling us why we should believe that you're the solution, not just what it does, but what it solves. Why now? Why you? You need to show how the market supports this belief. That's your research. You need to do this with highlighting benchmarks, analyzing competitors, showing proof that you have traction going or prototype building, highlighting the team and the talent that you're working with, and also answer why we should join in your mission. And this is not just about the financial return. This is also about what you're asking of your audience or your investor. And my next tip is to be consistent. Don't include things that might sound impressive, but they don't serve you, right? You need to do a lot in a short amount of time. So every detail needs to put in work. And it has to play a role, a very specific role. Every word, every detail. Streamline, simplify, trim it up. The storytelling, the pitch, the branding, all of it serves a role. And you want to preserve the design integrity that brings it all together as best you can. And the fifth one, I know it says focus on the screen. That's because it's about the presentation. I haven't talked much about the visuals that you might show or share in your story or give your pitch this visuals that you might show to give your pitch or present your solution. But I wanted to make sure that I gave this a moment. When it comes to your PowerPoints and your slideshows and your decks, please don't overclutter. Please. Often when we're presenting our ideas, we have a short amount of time and there can be the impulse to sort of use our visuals to say all the details that we didn't get a chance to say in our speech. Stop the impulse. Your visuals need to be there to support your presentation and not distract from it. We as your audience can only do so much in a short amount of time, right? So sometimes even in classrooms, professors are guilty of this. This is where we learn how to do our PowerPoints, right? People put entire blueprints on a PowerPoint screen and then define every single point on the PowerPoint screen. There are a bunch of different arrows. And then they have the audacity to keep talking as we're trying to read the entire instructional manual that they are pointing our attention to. This is too much. People are not going to remember. They're not going to remember your points. They're not going to remember what's supposed to be important. So simplify. Show the blueprint if you need to, but then extract or call attention to the key element that you're talking about. Help your audience focus. If you need to include sentences or something for the audience that they might need to read, let them read it. Leave the slide up long enough for them to read it. Read it for them. But don't try and do too many things at once and don't put too many things on one slide. I think the golden number is about 6 items per slide. Your visuals should offer support to your storytelling, and the storytelling should enhance the visuals. All right, I hope this was helpful. I'm gonna check now to see if there were any questions or anything that came through. But if you have any questions that you might ask later, you can also feel free to email me at maisha@gmail.com, which is my direct email address. While we're seeing if any questions came through, I can share one of the questions that I often get, which typically has to do with jargon and technical language. And this might just be because I often talk to scientists about how to do storytelling. But people want to know, like, how do you share jargon or technical information that you might have in your presentation? And this is what I'll say to it. One way to do it is to first define what it is that you're talking about. If you have to provide too much definition or too much context, it's content, in order to get to the point. It's probably something that you should consider leaving out. But I will say that there are ways to simplify the information. You can always talk about maybe the importance of how the hydrogen or the application that you developed will trigger IFTTT statements that ultimately cause automation and make the things work. In your presentation, that's important for you to know. It's important for your technical team to know, and people can ask you later. But in your presentation, you might just say, we utilize the existing infrastructure to trigger automations that make the generator work, right? So try and simplify as much as possible. And if you must use technical language, just always check for understanding. And you can do that within the context of explaining. So if I were to say, this is a vessel that holds liquid and we call it a glass, and we're using this glass to blah, blah, blah. So that is a common question that I get. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions come into the chat, but if they do, or if there are any questions, again, please email me. And I think we are ready to invite Susie back onto the screen. Thank you all so much, and I will be rooting for your happily ever after and your storytelling journeys.
Wow, thanks, Maisha. That was great. I love how you put the emotional impact into the process of communicating the pitch to the judges. This is going to be great to see what these people come up with. So I hope you had took a lot of notes. She had a lot of great points. Hopefully I can reinforce some of them along the way with what we're about to talk about next. I am here to share with you the process of best practices for submitting your pitch to the judges and to help you navigate the process of doing that on the platform. So I'm going to share my screen here and get my slides up and ready. And as you know, we're here with the Call for Code Education Innovation Case Competition. So again, my name is Susie Cother, and this will be the best practices for how to submit your competition submission. First, I'll start with the deadline. It's November 11th, 2021, pretty soon, and 9 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure you have that on your calendar, and we'll remind you along the way. I'm going to go through all the nuts and bolts of your process of getting your requirements to the judges. Maisha did a great job talking about the content and the narrative and the values that you need to put in your submission, but I'm going to talk about the elements, the physical elements that you need to deliver as your deliverables. So I'll start with the what you need for final submission. Then we'll talk about how to pull those elements together, and then what's expected in your projects and the mechanics of how to do it. So let's walk through that. I might move a little fast because I want to make sure we have enough time, but everything I'm about to discuss, you can find that and more on the website, on the event platform, under Insight and Resources. That tab has many articles there that will help you pull all of your things together and make sure that you have all the required items in your elements that you submit to the judges. There are two things I want to call out. The best practices for submissions, there's an entire blog there. There are audio files there that you can listen to that help you do better, tips on storytelling. And there are some demo videos as well. But they're all very specific points that will help you with making the best submission items possible. Also, the submission requirements themselves. I'll review it here, but I want to make sure I call this out, and you guys can go to that Insight and Resources page to find more details. Your goal will be to put together a plan using the compelling storytelling tips that Maisha just covered to appeal to the judges and set your solution apart from your competition. You will be scored 1 to 5 in the following areas, and for a total of 20 points. So that's relevancy and impact, design and feasibility, innovation and originality, and compelling storytelling. These are the judges' criteria, and this is what they're going to be looking at when they score your projects. The required deliverables. As you all know, I think most of you have gone in and started a project page, but you're going to need a submission name, Keep it to 5 words or less. That will be easier for everyone, for the judges to take it in and to really absorb. A pitch presentation file, which we'll review a little bit more in detail. A description of the chosen IBM technology or the other technologies you might use. Now keep in mind, a key component of this competition is that you have at least one IBM technology in your submission, in your solution. You'll also need a solution flow diagram, a written project summary, and then the submission video. So the pitch presentation. Here's some tips for the slides. I know Maisha addressed some of it, and I'm just going to reinforce some of those points as well. Make sure it's the presentation is the main focus of your submission. The video is going to be kind of the hook and augment your messaging, but you want to make sure you have a comprehensive thought, beginning, a middle, and the end in your presentation that you submit. You want to organize those slides, make it flow, make the content make sense. Keep your judges engaged and following and tracking with you and the points that you want to make along the way. A number of points on the slide. Maisha said 6 is a sweet spot. 4 is good too, but you don't want to overpopulate your slides because then your audience can't follow along. We don't restrict the number of slides. This has been a question before. We don't restrict the number of slides, but make sure that every slide you have has a purpose and has value to your message. The more slides does not mean the better the presentation. It's the slides that have an impact and that actually help tell your story. Text and bullets. That's a great way to present your message and your points. It's very clear and easily understood. And I'll give you an example of some good slides and some bad slides. You can use mixed visuals, images or graphics or charts plus the text, but don't overdo it, but make sure that what you're using resonates with the audience. And so one tip somebody gave me once, and I thought it was a good one, maybe end your presentation on a future slide or a slide that says where your solution is going to, where the outcome is for your solution. Make it a positive slide or make it a slide about your team members. I mean, you can show all of them there and make it look like you had a whole team working on this submission, which I'm sure you will have a whole team doing it. Here's an example of a good slide. It's not very clear, but as far as the pixels, but it's a very clear slide in and of itself. We know it's going to talk about objectives. There's only 3 of them there, and it's in a font that I can read, and it's very succinct. Another good slide would be something that has some color to it, where the text that you want to emphasize is bold. This one clearly talks about the strengths and the opportunities, the weakness and the threat. And if I stay here longer, then my audience can read through it with me. But it tells me exactly what I'm trying to communicate on this slide to my audience. This slide is probably not a good slide. This one is too busy. There's probably some good points in here, but it's hard to pull them out. There's a lot of colors going on, a lot of arrows. It's probably too much, and it doesn't do your project justice. So make sure you avoid slides like this. And this too is probably not a good slide. There's a lot of words. It's small font. There's obviously a grammar issue when you see the red lines up above, and it looks like somebody just threw on the light bulb. Try to steer away from these types of slides because you'll really lose the judges if they get bogged down in things like this. Here's a good slide. This is, something like this could be considered your future slide or a roadmap. This clearly says what the beginning part of your issue was. What are the stages to maybe finding your solution? It takes the judge's eyes right through to the final stages, and it can tell us how you want this thing to be perceived in the future, what you're hoping to achieve. So these are more tips about good slides. And I think you'll all know what a good slide is or isn't. But when I get farther down into this presentation, we'll talk about getting people to give you feedback and make sure you practice and you share these slides with others and with your mentors so you can get good ideas on what you need. As I stated earlier, IBM technology, you have to have at least one piece of IBM technology in your solution. That is key to this whole thing. And make sure that once you identify that technology, that it's represented in each of the elements. Make sure it's in your video. Make sure it's in your pitch presentation. Make sure it's in your solutions flow diagram. It has to be present throughout your presentation elements. You'll need a clear explanation of it, demonstrate its role and how it can help real people in their real situations, and explain how that technology will solve the problem in a new way. That's what we're looking for. The problems, we all know what the problems are, but we're looking for new and innovative ways where technology can make these challenges reduced or eliminate them altogether. There is the IBM Skills Learning link. I will show you where you can find that on the Insights and Resources page too. If you don't have access to that, you'll need to get into that link and find the information about the IBM technology in there. As I mentioned, the solution flow diagram. We recommend wireframes or decision trees, but something that's very clear and people can read and take in what they are. I know Maisha mentioned that as well. When there's these very technical charts and graphs and everything on it, people can't track what you're trying to share with them. Make sure the IBM technology or whatever technology you use is in the solutions flow diagram. Label everything clearly. And if you want, you can also put an index to the side of the diagram that helps your judges stay, number the items and then put the index to the side so that they can track along. I know I'm moving kind of quick, but I will have all this stuff available later, but want to make sure I get through it all before I run out of time. And the project summary. This is the breakdown of your solution into exactly how it's going to work and identifying the steps that you need to take to make it come to fruition. So it's the how it works part of your whole presentation. On the website, we have a place where you can identify some 5 higher level aspects of the process, and you can also put that in your presentation itself. The video demo. Every submission has a video requirement. You must have a video, and the runtime should be no longer than 3 minutes. You can come under that, but 3 minutes is the maximum we're going to allow. When you are starting to prepare for your video, you want to, these are a couple tips, but you want to budget your time. You don't want to spend the whole time on the solution and you didn't set up the issue, or you haven't been able to demonstrate the outcome. You want to make sure you give everything the right amount of time that it needs to develop it in such a way that the judges can follow along. Now, I think I said it before, but I want to make sure your presentation is the bigger part of your submission. The video is the hook. The video is a complement to your presentation. You don't have to put everything in the video, but make sure what you do put in the video has an impact and supports what you're putting in your full presentation. Use talking points to help you structure your presentation. You want to make sure you don't leave anything out in your video that you should be in the video. So if you have talking points and if you've pre-scripted it, then you know that you'll put what you need to have in there and you won't forget to mention anything that you feel is important. Be creative and be clever and try to engage your judges. The judges are going to see many of these and you want to make sure yours stands out. So any way that you can be creative is always advised. Consider your pacing and your energy and your flow. Right now, I feel like I might be racing through this, but I have to remember, I want to keep you engaged. So I want to take you through the journey with me and keep that in mind when you're thinking of your judges and what they're going to feel when they watch your video. Avoid drawing attention to what you don't have in your presentation. I think Maisha mentioned this as well. If you couldn't find all the research or if you couldn't put something together, don't address that in your video or in your presentation. You can put everything in the future, spin it to, we will have this in our next round of something. In the future, we will execute this, or this will be something that comes later in the next stages of our solutions. So keep everything in the positive. Determine the format that you're going to use, one presenter or multiple presenters. It might make a difference depending on your solution, and it might have very little impact, but that's something to consider as well. Make sure it's not too many people so that the judges can't track and keep with a single message. Again, don't forget to include how the IBM technology is part of your solution. And what's really advised is maybe a week out from the deadline of the competition, schedule one-on-one meetings with the mentor or with your friends, and show them your video, show them your slide presentation. Make sure that somebody else has eyes on this and gives you some good feedback, somebody who has knowledge and experience in this. It's really good to have that feedback coming in. And when you're about to make your video, make sure you practice it. Make sure you're comfortable, you are knowledgeable, and you appear on top of your information. That goes a long way with the judges too. The judging criteria, I'm going to review this again here briefly. More of this information is going to be the insights and resources, and I'm going to get there and show you where you can find all that too. But again, it's relevancy and impact, design and feasibility, innovation and originality, and compelling storytelling. That's what you will be scored on. And a quick submission checklist. Remember, there's no more than 5 members to a team, with no members on any multiple teams. All team members must be registered, eligible, and added to your team's project page. You only need 1 project page per team. Those will be created on the event platform where you are all registered. And the projects must be published before 9 p.m. on November 11th. And I'll show you this in the platform as well. Continuing on the checklist, you're going to have your presentation slides that can be added on the platform, and your slides must be accessible to the judges. They either need to be public, or if you give us a link, we have to make sure that the link has access for everybody who's viewing it. If you don't want to do a shared file folder type of thing, you can also do a PDF. And then, of course, you're going to need your video link, which will also be shared on the page. That can be a YouTube or a link from a shared folder. I'm going to wish you good luck here, but right now I'm going to change my screen over, and I'm going to go to the platform and check my time here and make sure, yep, I've got a little bit more time. Okay, good. I want to show you, this is the home page of the platform. I'm moving fast, so hopefully everybody's tracking with me. But I'm logged in right now as myself. And I want to point out here this navigation bar at the top. There's a lot of useful information up here. But the thing that I'd like to point out first and foremost is that Insights and Resources page. As I mentioned earlier, there's several articles on here that will help you pull your presentation together. It has the submission requirements, everything I just reviewed in a very abbreviated way here in this webinar exists in this article. The best practices for submission. This is a great blog. It talks a lot about the storytelling components. It talks about the actual elements that you need to submit as standalone items. It gives examples. It's very thorough in what you need to do to have the best submission possible. There's also the IBM Learning Plan here. Remember, these are all under the Insight and Resources tab. The judges' criteria, what you're going to be judged on, the official rules where you can determine your eligibility and make sure that you are, have the right criteria to be eligible for your submission, and the slide deck template. You don't need to use our slide deck that's provided here, but it is something that you can use if you want. And then there are some more elements here about gamification, the platform overview, CGIU's program overview is here as well, and join the Slack and frequently asked questions. And so this is a very useful tab on the platform. Now I'm going to go over to projects. I could be going too fast, but hopefully I still have you engaged. So I've set up a test situation here, and you can see I've gotten the Halloween theme going on here. But when you come into the projects page of your team, only one person needs to create a project page. You will add your team members to this page. And when you get to this tab, if you haven't yet done this, you will just hit add project, and that will get you started. I've started a project, so I'm going to go here and view it now. It's in the draft mode. So I'm going to, because I have some more things I want to add to my project, I'm going to hit edit, and I'm going to see some more opportunities for me to upload the elements and the assets that I need for my submission. So to make my page stand out, I might add, let's see what I've got. I think I will add this banner to it, and you'll see it populate here in a moment. And these are ways that you can brand your page so that it looks like a cohesive presentation. That's going to take a minute. I can see it's churning. But once that's up there, you'll see a banner behind this. Then I have my area for my title of my project. Remember, don't have too many words. You don't have a lot of space here, but you want something that tells what your project is about in a very short, in just 5 words or less. There's a subtopic here, a subtitle, that you can expand a little bit more on what your solution is going to be doing for your audience. I can see I'm a little slow here on my platform today. Sorry, but I'll come back to that in a moment. So here are the issues. This is a chance for you to distill down and make kind of a cliff notes about a little short abbreviation of what the issue is that you're going to address. You want to have it very clear and concise, and it goes in this section here, and it is required. So you'll also have a section for your magic solution, finding tools and ways to make quality education available to all. You can expand on that by using technology that will do this. So these are the areas where you start to introduce us to your solutions. This is the area that we mentioned where you have 5 areas. You can actually add another step, and you can add another step. You can talk about identifying the issue, identifying the audience, creating the solution, what might be your rollout strategy, who is it going to have impact. This is an area where you can do that. I'm going to take this back. I mentioned the TikTok challenge briefly. It's not required for your submission, but it is here on the projects page. If you do decide to do the challenge, the information is here. You can insert your link, and it will be then submitted with your entire project. But it is not required for your submission, and it does not give you more points for what the judges are looking for. It is a separate challenge, and it's part of the gamification. So I'm going to keep going past that. And then here's an opportunity to put your presentation URL. Right now I have a link in here, a Google shared link, and we want to make sure it's accessible. Some tip that I came up with, or that somebody shared with me, is I just make one giant Google folder with all of my assets in it, and make sure that folder has sharing capabilities with anybody who has the link. A week before before submissions close, we're going to try to go through everybody's project and make sure that you have all the requirements that you need. And this is one of the areas that we have to look for, because this is a required item. If you can't do a shared link, or that's not working for you, you're welcome to do a PDF file. You can add whatever pictures you want to, augment your presentation. I can take this and put a photo in there that's I think we're gonna churn a little bit again here, but we'll go head down and we're gonna see. I think it's gonna take a minute, but when I come back up, maybe it'll be there. And then this is where your team is added. You can have all of your members here. If you're your own team, then you'll just have the one person here, but you can add and take people off the team. And just a little bit below, if you have some social media links that you've created for this, go ahead and insert those here. I'm still in the It's still churning. So you can see it's starting to populate. As you can see, my banner's here now. If I take this into the view mode, if I save everything I just did, it's still churning, but I think it will come along. There we go. Okay, so my project's saved, and I want to hit view mode. So here's the banner that I've created for this presentation. I've got my title. I've got my subtitle going on. I have inserted my video link here. That was on the edit page. Make sure if it's YouTube, Vimeo, or you have a shared folder that you have the video in, make sure it works properly. You can create a logo for your submission, but this is where you tell us what the issue is that you're addressing, what your solution is for it, your higher level stages of the solution. This is where the presentation slides will end up. Obviously, I just have dummy slides in here now, but this is where this is what the judges will see and what it will look like. So you want to make it clean. This is the photo I uploaded. Maybe this is a diagram. Maybe this is a picture of your team members or something else of your production. Again, your team members will show up here, and that is what the judges see. And we will make sure as we get closer that everybody should have all these elements built up. Right now, my video goes to a shared folder where I can play my short clip there. So make sure everything has access for the judges. And when you are done and when you're ready to publish, the key is to take this section over here. This is usually hidden back there, so you want to make sure you find it and you transfer that to published. That will be how you submit your project. That's people usually ask, now what do I do? So you can see it's published, and I can even go back out and take it to draft and continue editing it if I have things I want to change, if I have things I need to alter. But you can share that with your team members. Should all be able to see this once you've attached them to the project, and then you can all work on it together. So I'm going to hit save one more time. I'm going to hit go to view mode. And then I'm going to go back to here and see if stop sharing my screen, I think, Rihanna. And I want to check in with all of you. I want to see my time. I'm just about out of time. Rihanna, are you there? I think she is.
Yes. Yes.
Hi. Do you want to take my screen out and we'll see if there's any questions for anyone? So frequently asked questions that I get are, yes, you can have you can be a team member. You don't have to have 5 people, but you can have up to 5 people on your team. Again, how many slides are you allowed to have? There is no limit. Just make sure the slides you have purpose and function and communicate your solution the best way possible. I'm looking to see if there are any other questions. Slides link. Can I use a different platform for the presentation? No, you can't use a different platform for the presentation. Let me see. Oh, you can. You could use whatever you submit. Just make sure if you did a presentation in Canva, if you did it in PowerPoint, if you did it in Google Slides, you can use those as long as what link you put into the platform is accessible by the judges and the organizers. We want to make sure that we can see those slides. If you put them in there and there's no way for us to access them, then it will be difficult to judge your particular submission. So make sure that's that. Google Slides link, should I use the Google Slides link only? No, it doesn't have to be Google. That just happens to be one that works really well. I probably didn't mention this, but our platform works great with Google Chrome as your browser. When you have difficulty, you usually find that when you're not on Google Chrome. So if you use Google Chrome, if you use Google for some of your documents, it'll probably work very well. So that's just a recommended from us, but you can use whatever you need to do what you need to do, to post the slides the way you need to post them. I'm trying to see if there's any other questions. I'm probably just about out of time. And there's a question. Are there sources available to use in storytelling that Maisha recommends? We can make sure I can, if Maisha provides, she's going to provide us with her slide deck. And I think she's got some summary points attached to one that's special for the viewers. So we'll make sure that's attached to this screen, this webinar room afterwards. And I'll make sure it gets on the insights and resources page. I think I'm close to time, and I want to make sure I've got any more questions. I don't see anything in the chat. I hope I haven't gone too fast. I know I threw a lot at you, but we're really grateful to Maisha Alexander of CGIU to share with us her expert skills on storytelling and how to really make an impact, and really how to show how technology can enhance people's lives. That's what we're trying to do here. So hopefully you guys had some great tips from her. And I will make sure that I'm available. Again, I'm Susie Kother with, I'm the project manager for Be My App here, and I'm standing by to take questions anytime. Make sure you join our Slack channel where you can see regular updates from the organizers as this competition winds down. There's only, I think, 15 or 14 more days, so I wish you all the best of luck. Thanks for joining us here today, and take care.